Hello and welcome to Keeping It Young podcast, conversations about marriage, family, and ministry life. I'm Dave.
And I'm Bethlie.
And we are the Youngs.
Thank you for joining us again.
We are winding up our series that we've done this fall entitled Books You Should Read and Why.
I hope you're not tired of it. We have so enjoyed it. And honestly, probably 2 or 3 books ago, we were thinking we were done. And then we were like, oh, what about this one? What about this one?
And literally, we could keep going. We could evaluate so many books. And remember, our heartbeat behind it is to remind you as families, in the culture we live in, where there are so many negative influences and so many horrendous challenges, I just want to remind you that there's material available. Conferences, there's books, there's articles, there's magazines. There's help for almost every issue you would face immediately. You can find help immediately. And the problem is that we would rather, scroll through Instagram Reels. The problem is we'd rather sit down and laugh at a TV program. The problem is that we are crazy busy in the culture we live in. But the answers are available in our culture. You just have to take the time to emphasize them, prioritize them, and invest in them.
Yes.
And that's why we're recommending all of these books to you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember, we went through one book about marriage. We went through a book about parenting. We went through the book about helping our children to understand how to grow up in a porn culture with purity in their heart.
Mm-hmm. We've
talked about the Dana Gresh book. And we really want to kind of sum up in a little bit of a different book. This book was given to me for a kind of a funny reason. I don't want to say a good book, but I have a staff member whose name is Josh Hawley. And he is a wonderful staff member. And in our state of Missouri, we also have a senator named Josh Hawley. And sometimes there is some, cute little stories or funny little stories that happen because his name is Josh and the senator's name is Josh. The book we want to cover now is called Manhood, The Masculine Virtues America Needs, and it is written by Senator Josh Hawley. And it just is, he gave it to me, here's the book I wrote. That was kind of the joke. But he also said it is a good book. And it really is. And so I want to recommend to you this final book in this series, Manhood, The Masculine Virtue America Needs, and just tell you a little bit about it. The author here in the state of Missouri, where I pastor, represents Missouri in the U.S. Senate. So this is Senator Josh Hawley. He was a First Amendment lawyer. He has been a law professor. He was our former attorney general here in the state of Missouri. And he currently lives in Ozark, Missouri, and he and his bride have 3 children. And the book is written to address an issue that concerns many in our world today. And the issue is that masculinity is under attack. And we knew this. You go back, 10 years or so ago, well, we knew masculinity was under attack. We are now living in the aftermath of that attack, and it is dumbfounding.
It is, and I don't think you could even have a social media account and not agree with that. I think even people who would think that masculinity needs to be under attack and they maybe rebel against what they call a patriarchal society, which we haven't had a patriarchal society in forever.
It's actually now called, white supremacist society.
And if they rage against that or rebel against that, I think they would even say, yes, there has been an attack on masculinity. You can't even watch an Instagram reel after reel after reel of wives making fun of their husbands or ladies railing against masculinity or whatever. And so I think you would all have to agree.
Yeah, Senator Hawley calls this issue a crisis. And this book lays out why it is a crisis. And I agree with him. And here's why I love the book. When I read this book, it offers a perspective that is sometimes outside of my realm, because he's writing as a government leader. Mm-hmm. And I always, my research and everything is based on commentaries and Christian leaders. Senator Hawley professes and know Jesus Christ. So he does profess to be a Christian, and he gives major indication in this book that he at least either knows Jesus Christ or has a massive awareness of everything Christianity teaches. And I do believe that he is a Christian, a sincere Christian man. He does show how that manhood was perceived in the Greek and the Roman area. Shows how how they saw it. He has great illustrations from his own experience. I love reading about how he was, his upbringing and his background and all. But my favorite part was that he builds a model of manhood following the Bible, the Word of God. And he does that beautifully in this book. So I'm thankful that he is a leader in our government culture. And I think his book just helps you to get to know him on a whole different level than what you would see in the government. So here's the point of the book. Senator Hawley shows the essential virtues a man should cultivate. He shows why a man has to be a warrior, a builder, a priest, and a king.
I love that.
And he shows how to do that. He shows the importance of courage and commitment, that men have to have courage and be committed. And then this is a part that really helped me in the book. He shows the philosophy behind modern liberalism, and he offers evidence as why it is so destructive to our nation and our culture as a whole. And I've appreciated that. So here's the chapters. All right, so the book is divided into two parts, and it includes 10 chapters in those two parts. Not in each part, but 10 total chapters. One is called In the Beginning, one is called A Man's Mission, then there's A Man's Battle and A Man's Promise. And then he lays out 5 chapters here. He talks about husband, father, warrior, builder, priest. Actually, that's 6, and king. So he lays those out. So let's just jump in here and talk about the book a little bit, and it won't take long to get through it. But he begins in part 1, has 4 chapters. And in these first 4 chapters, he lays out general patterns of the crisis, basically, is what he lays out.
Right.
And this is one of the observations that he makes that I, as a pastor, I'm so very aware of. More and more young men live at home, meaning they've not yet left. Way back in the book of Genesis, a man leaves his father and mother. The idea there is marriage. That's repeated again in the day of Jesus. Jesus said that himself. A man leaves his father and mother. It is repeated in the Apostle Paul's teaching in Ephesians. A man leaves his father and mother. We're living in a culture where that doesn't happen. And here's the stats. You want to read some of those? Here's the stats that he lays out in his book.
50% of lower skilled young men in their 20s who have a job still live at home or with a close relative. If they don't have a job, 70% still live at home.
So, and he's talking about by young men here, he's talking about 20 in the 20s. I think 25, 29, 30. This is the age group he's talking about. 70% still live at home if they don't have a job.
If they don't have a job, why don't they have a job? That's what I want to know.
He's going to talk about that here in just a moment as well.
Okay.
So we'll come back to that.
In 2015, 1/4 of young men in the 20 to 30 range had no work at all. In 1970, 95% of 30-year-olds made more money than their fathers had, but in 2014, only 44% did.
Now, one of the things Senator Hawley points out there is that sometimes that's the fault of the young man who has no desire to get a job, no desire to advance, no desire to learn, no desire to be trained, no desire to move beyond where he is. It is also the desire and design of a culture that is doing all it can to remove the influence of masculinity from the world that we live in.
Yes.
He talks about how one of the issues is not just the living habits in work, but one of the issues is there's an underperformance at school by guys today. And he gives several details there.
Yes, 70% of D's and F's are given to boys. By 8th grade, only 20% of boys are proficient in writing. At the same age, only 24% can earn proficient scores on reading exams. Boys now make up 2/3 of students in remedial programs, not because their intelligence is lower, but because they aren't trying. And that makes me wonder if the teacher is a little bit antagonistic towards boys.
Well, there is definitely some of that. And what our culture has done is they have designed a culture that is designed for girls, to promote girls.
Right.
It is on purpose designed to demasculinize boys. And so what we do with boys instead today is we push them away and we medicate them. So a great majority of the boys that we read about here that are underperforming, that have no drive, had no desire, have no job, are medicated highly. The medication they're taking is supposed to cure their anxiety, their behavior, their attention deficit, their hyperactivity. All of those medications that are being given today are actually causing many of the issues that they are supposed to remove.
Right.
And so instead of curing anxiety, it just simply causes more anxiety. Instead of curing, hyperactivity, it just simply leaves the kid hyperactive. And so this medication today that is given to our children, rarely does it cure anything. It actually just maintains it or leaves it worse.
Yes.
And then on top of that, here we are, we're medicating our young men. But on top of that, we are introducing them to things in our culture that is actually preventing them from advancing. So what do? Let's replace education with sports. Let's replace education with video games. Let's replace education with leisure time. So
now, would you not say that sports, and again, this is under attack in our culture, because we were just watching a football game, I guess, last weekend, and one of the commercials was this huge, like, athletes from all stripes, all different sports, but men and women and just all kinds of different people on the screen. But the big point was, we are all athletes. Well, no kidding. I think if you are a girl and you play soccer, you're an athlete. Maybe, I don't know. And then if you're a guy who plays, but would you not say that sports does sometimes promote masculinity?
It does, but what is the culture we're living in? The culture we're living in is saying, guys, you're nothing because girls can play.
Just
girls
as
are
well as
equal
you can.
to you on the wrestling mat.
Okay.
They are equal to you on the football field. They are better than you at soccer. They are better than you at volleyball. They will outswim you. They are better. They are better. They are better. And even enter the trans, all the transgenderism stuff, basically even muddies that water even more.
Right.
So all of it is ideologically based. There is a point against masculinity in so much of what's happening in our culture.
True. And this is not, I'm not trying to make a statement here. Our Christian school plays sports, and our boys soccer team often plays other soccer teams that have guys and girls on the team. Yeah, it's a co-ed team. And so what I have noticed, though, is that our guys, if they're playing other guys, they're getting the job done. They're aggressive. They're doing what they're supposed to do. But you put a girl on that field, it doesn't matter how aggressive that girl is. And unfortunately, I have seen some really unladylike aggressive behavior from the young ladies on the soccer field because they want to prove something. But then our guys have to back off because of virtually how God made them. They're bigger, they're stronger, they're more powerful. They really could hurt that girl. They really could. And so they do back off. And then I guess he is making a point here that sports isn't really helping with their masculinity.
So one of the points I would make there, and he doesn't cover this as much in his book, but just as one of the points I was thinking about in observing what's going on and how are we handling this, it is very true that on the one hand, we want to teach our girls to be ladies, but we put them in sports to be aggressive and better than you.
Yeah.
We want to teach our boys to treat women with respect, and then we put them on an equal footing on a field where they're supposed to run over them and defeat them.
Right.
And it just is an attack against masculinity.
Yes.
Because it damages. So there's living habits that are and work. That's a general pattern that shows the trouble we have in our culture. There's underperformance at school. And the question comes up, okay, so young men aren't working in their 20s and 30s. What do they do with their time? And the answer is given in the book. Well, it involves screens and leisure and porn. We stare at screens. We are basically at leisure, and our life is surrounded by porn. My daughter and I were out eating the other day, and there were several young men that came in and sat at a table near us. First of all, they were very young. I'm guessing their 20s, maybe college age. They were driving a vehicle nicer than I can afford. Okay, so the question is, okay, where do you get that? My guess is from daddy.
Right.
Because nobody has a job. Not one of those guys has a job that pays enough to drive a $90,000 vehicle.
Right.
So daddy bought them a vehicle. The other thing was that they said very little at that meal. They were eating at a fairly nice restaurant because I was on a date with my daughter, but they didn't say anything because they stared at a screen the whole time. And I'm not judging them. We are living in a culture to where guys have replaced being a husband and a father and a warrior and a builder and so forth with leisure and screens and porn. Another way of saying it is socializing, relaxing, and leisure. Vast amounts of leisure time include video games and porn for the young men in our culture. And now they're battling depression and drug abuse at historic levels. The results have been and are being disastrous. The suicide rate among young men is higher than it's ever been. And so Senator Hawley just lays all this out. And here's what he shows in the time that we have left. He shows that liberalism is the philosophy that's behind it all. Liberalism believes that Western society is unequal, unjust, and corrupt to its foundations.
True.
And you that follow anything about the news, anything about what happens in our government, anything about the speeches and what happens on our college campuses, everything that seems to be happening in this culture could be traced right to this ideology, that Western society is unequal, unjust, and corrupt. Masculinity is one of those foundations. And because it is corrupt, here's their words, not ours, it needs to be smashed for men to be able to live free. So that what liberalism believes is that this idea that men are warriors and builders and kings and priests and are designed by God to be that is keeping men from living free lives. Men should be free to play video games all day if they want to. Men should be free to have sex with whoever they want to have it with and have as many babies as they want to have, and without any ramifications. And so liberalism is promoting this unbiblical, ungodly philosophy that has absolutely been designed by Satan himself to attack one of the pillars laid forth in the truth of God's word,
yes.
And that is the pillar of masculinity. So Senator Hawley's point is that the answer to the masculine crisis, this is why I recommend this book, is that the oldest and most profound, you find the answer in the oldest and most profound story there is, and that is the story of mankind according to the Word of God,
yes.
According to the Bible. So he lays out several things then, okay? Chapter 2 places an emphasis on man's purpose, traces us all the way back to the Garden of Eden, to Adam. Chapter 3 then places an emphasis on man's responsibility and duty, and there in that chapter really starts introducing us to this liberal idea that underlines the attack. He talks about Epicurus and Rousseau, and how that, Rousseau as a Frenchman and all that he brought in and the liberal ideas that have actually been carried over into Karl Marx and communism and all that goes into that idea. It's in chapter 4 where he really puts it all together, because he details how masculinity became something oppressive in the minds of liberalism.
Right.
Therefore is something that has to be avoided and eradicated if they're going to win.
Right.
And so it really caught me off guard, because I had never thought, sometimes it's like, guys, pick it up. It's so easy to get frustrated with the guys in our culture, with a son. But dads and moms, we've got to realize that the culture our boys are growing up in is absolutely attacking them in every way possible. That's why I believe in Christian education. That's why I believe in homeschooling.
Yeah.
It's why I believe in teaching our sons to work and celebrating their work and teaching them to make money and earn their own way, promoting them towards marriage and family and teaching them to build and be warriors and celebrating masculinity. In chapter 3, when he introduced the readers to Epicurus and Rousseau, he showed how that their ideology led men to throw off all responsibility and simply to choose only to do what they wanted to do. Their happiness and fulfillment was the only reason to live. He even shows out how that historically we read that Rousseau fathered 5 children and they all grew up in orphanages. It had nothing to do with his own kids, because he was living his own theology and his own ideology.
Yeah.
In chapter 4, then, he shows how that the followers of Karl Marx paved the way for this attack today in modern masculinity. If your kids are on a secular campus, they will be surrounded by Karl Marx ideology.
Oh, yeah.
Which is why we see that now in the riots of the young people, in Antifa, and all of these issues that are coming up in our culture that makes you older folks scratch your head going, what is wrong with this world? Well, it is an on-purpose attack. It saw traditional culture as the enemy, especially Christianity. That's Karl Marxism. And from there, it attacks femininity first, and then it attacks masculinity.
Yeah.
It attacks femininity by saying, girls, don't let the culture you live in say you're a woman. You rise up and be whatever you want to be. And then it attacks masculinity by saying, don't you dare try to lead. Don't you dare try to man up and protect women. How dare you act like you have some moral high ground here. And it just undermines everything. So he gives ample illustrations of how this is being taught in our schools and in our institution and how it is destroying our nation as we know it. And then he lays out all these final 6 chapters. And he talks about the importance of training young men, and he even talks to young men about how to prepare to be a husband.
Yes.
and about how to embrace fatherhood, and how to rise up and be a warrior and be a builder and be a king and be a priest. He lays all of this out. So, having sons, this book really caught my attention, and working with so many young men as I do, this book caught my attention.
Yes.
So I highly recommend it to our culture.
I would think, I have not yet read this book, and now that we've done this review on it and I've read David's notes on it, I think probably it would be a good book for me to read. I know that even in Christianity, young ladies are taught to be skeptical of what we call in Christianity toxic masculinity. And girls, just remember that because a man sins and steps outside of the godly role that God has given to him and may use his position in a way that gives him what he thinks of as power over other people, and he abuses that power or whatever it is. Just because there are some men who have sinned does not mean that all masculinity is wrong. In fact, masculinity is godly, it is biblical, and it is awesome if it is embraced by a godly man. And there is nothing that I like more than to know that my husband and my sons and the men of our church are rising up and being the men that God would have them to be the leaders. It takes so much pressure off of us girls. And if we are going to embrace this whole ideology of, masculinity is so toxic and they just abuse women, that is not true. That is sin that does that. Godly masculinity lifts up women, protects women, treats women well, pursues God, and does what they're supposed to do. So be very careful about that.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting that in the cultures we think back through the last number of years, feminism started by saying, we're equal to men, and began attacking masculinity. And then when masculinity embraced what feminism was challenging, okay, fine, we'll just live for ourselves.
Right.
Now they attack masculinity as toxic. Mm-hmm. And it just is it's a downward spiral into chaos, because it is from the father, the devil, the father of lies.
Yes.
And what can we learn from this truth? Moms and dads, teach your ladies well, teach your daughters well to be wives, to have respect for masculinity. Mm-hmm. Teach your sons to be biblically masculine, to have respect for ladies. Prepare your daughters to marry godly, masculine leaders. Mm-hmm. Teach your sons to look for wives that are beautifully feminine. Mm-hmm. God's word is the answer. Senator Hawley is right about that.
Yes.
And I'm sure he and I would disagree on a whole lot of areas, probably. He does things more politically. I do things more, in church. I'm pastoral. Mm-hmm. But the whole point is that we have to embrace Bible truth to get the answer to these ideologies. Yes. Well, we really can wind up here today. We're concluding this series on books that can help and why. And by the way, Bethlie and I would love to hear from you. Do you have any books that you particularly thought this book was outstanding and helped our family, helped our marriage, helped in this particular season of our life? Mm-hmm. We'd love to hear from you, because we're always reading, and we're always looking for books and adding books to our collection so that we can help others with the materials. And in a culture like ours, where there are literally thousands of books available, it's sometimes good to have a handle on one to say, yeah, I read that one, it was life-changing. Yes. And because you can't read all of them, but when someone recommends one highly to us, it gives us a chance to find a new book and have that in our resources as well. Any final thoughts about books that can help and why?
Well, I was just thinking, you had just said, reach out to us, let us know about books, and how they help in different seasons of life. This season of life for us over this year, and it's amazing that has been a year since we were called to come to Westwood Baptist in Poplar Bluff, Missouri. But this has been a learning curve for both of us. It's been a busy season for both of us. So if you have reached out to us, please hang in there. We will get to you. I promise. David had mentioned that in our our last episode, and I was sitting there thinking, oh, I do have some emails I need to get to. So we promise we will get to those as soon as possible.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us, and I hope you're preparing for Christmas and looking forward to Christmas just around the corner, Christmas 2025.
Yay.
You are listening to the Keeping It Young podcast. We are honored and happy that you would do so. Whatever else you do in this coming week, make sure that you serve the Lord with gladness.